Now, hello and welcome to the latest in our series of CBAA CMTO webinars. This evening's webinar, how to get more out of your radio station's content. People access content in so many different ways. It's a challenge to get the most out of what you're creating and grow your audience. This evening's webinar will find out how to identify your content strengths, focus your station's content and volunteers on maximising them, and efficiently integrate on-air, web simulcast, radio on demand, your website and social media, as well as provide information on the cost-effective tools you can use to do so, including the CBAA's new radio on demand platform and radio website services. This evening's session will be presented by Chelsea Dooley, whose real name is Chelsea Dealey, but it's one of our jokes here in the office that we mispronounce her surname, and I thought, gee, you know what the webinar could use? A joke. So I've just inserted that one in there, presumably because Chelsea's mic isn't on at the moment. That's why you can't hear her laughing at that, but I imagine she is laughing heartily. Chelsea, if you want to turn on your microphone and let us know how hilarious that was, that'd be fantastic. Chelsea is the AMRAP Pages and CD Mail-Out Coordinator at CBAA, working with hundreds of stations to gather and coordinate music. Chelsea was also the music director at Eastside Radio and still produces and presents a weekly music program there. It's a new music program, as well as the fact that she was very, very active in their Global Rhythms Festival that was held just the past weekend. What are we going to be doing tonight? In this webinar, we will gain knowledge on how community broadcasters can manage their station website and promote their online content through web, social media and mobile phones. Learn how to generate web content that complements your broadcasts and find out more about the online tools purpose-built for community radio. Now, I'm just going to click on out of there for a brief second because before I get Chelsea going, I need to talk quickly about the 2017 CBAA conference. You better believe we'll be keeping this conversation going on and on at the conference. It will be the 9th to the 12th of November at the Gold Coast Convention Centre. Registrations are open now. Hear from experts and leaders. Meet your fellow community broadcasters. Go to fantastic social events and so much more. That's the 2017 CBAA conference. More information available at cbaa.org.au/conference. Now, Chelsea, are you there? Do you read me? Because I'm about to make you the presenter for this evening's webinar. I'm hoping you read me.
I do. I truly do. The highlight of my day is the different nicknames you come up for me on a daily basis, Danny.
Not just me. It's everyone does that.
Pretty much, yeah. Everyone in this office gives me a different name every day, so never a dull moment in this in the CBAA and AMRAP. Yeah, awesome.
All right, Chelsea, the floor is yours.
No worries. Well, hello, everyone. As Danny mentioned, my name is Chelsea, and with me also is Brooke Olsen, who you might have seen in the chat box. She is going to be helping you guys out with any questions that you might have during the webinar. And if we don't get to your questions as well, then we will be kind of making a note of them and sending out any answers and information that we can to everyone so that everybody has the information. I must also start by just relaying a quick apology from Chris Johnson, who is our fearless leader here at AMRAP. He wasn't able to be here tonight for personal reasons, and so that is why you're hearing the lovely dulcet tones of my voice. So I'm going to do my best, but it should hopefully really inspire you and get you kind of thinking about the ways in which you can get more out of the content that you make at your stations. All right, let me now hit the presenter mode. Awesome. Cool. So, yeah, I guess the title is pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to get through quite a lot of information tonight. So, yeah, please bear with me. There will be points as well that I'd love for you guys to have a bit of a hand in it too. We did have a poll, actually, a couple of polls that we were going to run, Danny, which I wonder if we might do now before we get started. Is
Excellent.
That cool?
That is no worries at all. I will just start the first poll. Where is it? Select the first poll. Then this first poll is going to be asking you what your role is at your station, whether you're a presenter, producer, staff, board member, or other. Now, very likely you might sort of have multiple roles, but if you're able to answer that poll with sort of your primary role at the station. So hopefully that poll's showing up for everyone. We've got about, nearly more than half people have voted at the moment. Keep that going for just a little while longer. 83% have voted. Just give you another couple of seconds, just letting us know what your role is there at the station. And I think pretty much, so we're looking at primarily presenters and producers, with a few other people there as staff and board members. I'll close that poll because the majority of people have voted. Our next poll is in regards to your station's online facilities. So does your station have, and you can, with this one, you can select more than one option. Do you have a regularly updated station website? Do you have live web simulcast, aka live streaming, radio on demand, or none of the above? Now it's looking at the people who've voted so far that everyone has a regularly updated station website, and while that might seem very obvious, it's one of those things where not all community broadcasting stations have their own dedicated website. Some will sort of use social media and sort of other things, but yeah, it's good to see that a lot of people have that there. Also, a great many stations have live streaming in place by the look of things in this poll, and roughly a bit over a third with radio on demand, and 0 with none of the above. Everyone's voted. I'm going to close that poll, and Chelsea, back to you.
Awesome. No, that was great. It's really good to kind of get an idea of what you guys are already using at your stations and what you already have access to, because we will have a lot to go through that will kind of relate to those elements. So yeah, we'll kick things off with some stats, which we love. So this was, I'm just going to open these notes. This was kind of, my aim is, I guess, to set a bit of context for tonight's presentation by going through these. This is research that was kind of collated by a streaming service called Pandora, which you might have heard of. Kind of not necessarily similar, but on the same kind of length as like your Spotify's, Apple Music, Tidal, if anybody uses Tidal, and the like. They did a whole bunch of research and found that Australians spend per day about 3.4 hours with audio. So audio could be, of course, music, could be podcasts, interviews, anything that obviously requires you to listen to it. That is what this kind of covers. And as you can see just underneath that there is a little bit of a graph there that kind of breaks it down a little bit. So as you can see, AM and FM radio currently holds just over half of the, I guess, half of the stats as such. So over half of the people that they kind of looked at, you still listen to AM and FM radio. Now, you've got owned music there with 16%, and streaming, very interestingly, is 11%. And then it kind of breaks it down even further from there, right down to podcasts, which are about 3%, and audio books, which are about 1%. So yeah, you can see there that radio is still very much a relevant and highly sought after source for audio content and information. But streaming services have definitely kind of grown. If you think about it, radio about 20 years ago, streaming services weren't really around, and radio was kind of like the dominant platform. But in the last 5 years, streaming services have increased to 11%, which is quite remarkable, really, when you think about it. So it's definitely apparent that, I guess, online is a very legitimate and growing broadcast platform, and is really kind of converging and almost replacing traditional radio and music retail outlets. But it doesn't sound, I guess, as doom and gloom as what it does on this slide, as you'll see a little later on in the presentation. Breaking it down even further as well, this is, I guess, looking at age brackets and the share of time that they spend listening to these particular audio sources, particularly AM and FM radio and streaming audio. So as you can see from this, it kind of says, I guess, the older that you get, the less likely you are to use streaming services and are more likely to, I guess, tune into your local radio station, either on the FM or AM frequency. Whereas I guess the younger you get, your streaming services are, I guess, more popular. But you can see from all three of these age brackets that FM radio is still very much, FM and AM radio, sorry, is still very much a predominant source of audio, according to this research, which is really cool for us to know as community radio broadcasters. Now we can kind of look at it, this kind of breaks it down to time of day as well. And it's kind of, I think you probably all would have anticipated that the peak periods in which people tune into radio is the drive times, your mornings and your evenings / afternoons, the times when people are in the car, and that is kind of, I guess, their commuting space. And that is where radio is dominant still and kind of beating the streaming. But then you can kind of see down here, I guess, towards the end of the night, and kind of also, I mean, in the middle of the day as well, that streaming has definitely taken over in those times of day. And then finally, locations is a really interesting one too, but kind of really echoes what we've just kind of seen there, is that in the car particularly, again, in the commute, radio is still a predominant factor, whereas streaming services are kind of taking over every other space of your life. So whether it be at home, it might be at work, their streaming services are kind of, you know, taking up that space and kind of phasing out radio. So this all does sound, I guess, a little bit worrying in a way, because radio isn't really as considered at other times or locations than in the car on the commute. But it's a good time to ask, I guess, why? Why is that? And it kind of then leads into the fact that, well, obviously radio, one of radio's key strengths is the content that we make as radio makers and producers. And this quote here is from a, well, you may or may not have heard of BuzzFeed. Essentially, BuzzFeed is an internet media company. They kind of focus on, I guess, social news, entertainment. They're all kind of based online and really kind of hammer social media. If you follow them, you probably are inundated with BuzzFeed posts. But this guy, Jonathan Perelman, who is, as you can see there, the head of digital initiatives, really kind of puts a great point in place, and it really can apply to radio as well. The point is if content is king, then distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. It's not nearly enough to create a good piece of content. You have to understand how content spreads. He also kind of followed up by saying, social media is the starting point online. The only reason that Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest exists and works is because of the content that it is promoting. So in other words, content is essentially what makes social media work. And we as radio presenters and radio makers and creators of content on a radio medium can really take this and like learn from it basically and apply it to our own practices. We make unique content. That is one of the strengths of community radio, and I guess one of the reasons why we're all here today and still very heavily involved in our respective stations. So yeah, looking at it as is kind of apparent, audio is essentially the cornerstone for our content strategies. As radio stations, we make awesome audio content, whether that be through our song selection, our interviews, relative segments that we might do depending on what kind of show you do. That is what we're good at, and we need to try and make the most of that as much as we can. Writing articles is awesome, but you know, one could argue that it might not be the strength of radio as an audio medium. And video is the same. It's awesome to have that, and really great to kind of put that little bit extra effort in to kind of enhance the content that you're creating. But it is, as many of you might realize, very labor intensive when you're kind of preparing. So much effort goes into preparing your show week to week or day to day, depending on what kind of show you do, that trying to do anything extra can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. So that's where I guess technology comes into play, and they are kind of critical, but of course, if your core content, which is of course your audio, is either not accessible or possibly not relevant on air and online, then it's all a little bit useless in that way. And that's not to say as well that photos and text is completely redundant and that we shouldn't do it. By all means, they are great additions that can really enhance the content that we create for on air. But they need to be done, I guess, in a more economical way that really supports the audio, as opposed to just taking the forefront and kind of overshadowing it. So a content strategy is essentially a way that you can put this into place at your stations and really kind of get the whole station on board to maximize your content's reach. And as we've kind of been stressing, you know, your radio station has your main strength, which is your audio content. So you really need to start, a good thing to do would be to start thinking about the content strategy goals that you might have. And obviously it would differ from station to station, but these are what we feel are the fundamentals of this. Firstly, of course, creating great audio for broadcast that serves your community as community radio stations. Super, super important. Distributing this content then to work online and to reach and engage your community. Just really focusing on the method of delivery after your content has been aired. That is also crucial. And this can then lead to growing an audience across all platforms to attract more content makers and stakeholders. So whether that be on your website and then as an extension of that on social media as well. And the ways in which you can achieve this content strategy is, of course, to ensure that everybody at your station knows about it. Everybody is informed, whether it be at the very early stages of training, when a new program maker or a new volunteer comes on board at your station, they are trained in it and they are fully aware of everything that needs to go into this content strategy. It's also a really good idea to divide the roles and tasks across different volunteers and different people so that everybody can support the strategy and it's not just reliant on a select few amount of people or maybe just even one person, because that's when it becomes a bit more unattainable. And of course, when we all kind of in a social media age and an online age, everybody at your station incorporates the strategy into their own online lives. And that doesn't just mean them having their Facebook page for their show and of course sharing out content, but it could also even be as simple as sharing out their own shows and content through their personal Facebook pages. You've got to remember that all of your friends on Facebook are also your audience. They're people that you can reach as well. So yeah, it's all about kind of covering all bases and thinking about things in a very practical way. Content strategy should then have priorities, and these are the priorities, I guess, these are the ways that we see they should be ordered. Of course, being on air and the content that you put to air live is definitely the most crucial and critical part of your content strategy. This has always been the main delivery method for radio, and essentially it will probably never change. But of course, other things have to come into play for us to be able to keep up with these changing trends in a digital age. And of course, as many of you have already indicated through that poll, live web simulcast is also a very important element, because it allows you to kind of reach those people that maybe aren't on the commute, or in the car. They can then tune into your radio station via your website or your live web simulcast. Equally, well, just a bit less than that is, of course, on demand. In a culture where streaming provides that instant, I want to listen to this song or this podcast or this interview right now, on-demand streaming is also there to kind of fulfill that. They're able to listen to your show or the interview that you did right then and there when they choose to do so. It's kind of like meeting them in their own environment. And then lastly, podcasting is another one which is, definitely important, but I sometimes we kind of talk about this a lot here at AMRAP particularly, is that podcasting is great, but may not also be, it requires, a lot of extra effort, obviously, when it comes to cutting up and editing together audio to make a great podcast and really kind of capture what you're trying to capture. So it kind of goes into the same bucket, I guess, as your video contents. But it also can be important if you've created a community that is taking your podcasts and listening to them. So the main things when it comes to these priorities, of course, is to ensure that your website is your home for all of the three listed after the on-air priority. So the live web simulcast, on-demand streaming, and of course the podcasting if you choose to do so. Social media is great, but it's also quite fleeting. It doesn't necessarily have a permanent kind of a permanent kind of fixture in that way, and that'll become kind of apparent a little later on as well. But social media is more of a tool that allows you to translate and adapt your content from your live web simulcast, your on-demand streaming, and or your podcasting to work on it, not so much to house it, but to kind of carry it further. So you can use social media to drive audiences to this content as opposed to having the content live on social media solely and wholly. The current marketing practices at many stations, and this is not to say that these are wrong per se, but this is what has been the case for quite a number of years. Of course, largely aimed at asking people to tune in when content is relevant to them and it is actually on air at that time. So really trying to pull people in at a specific moment in time as opposed to meeting them there. But of course, you know, as is with radio, if you don't have on demand, content disappears as soon as it goes to air. There's no real kind of ability to be able to get more life out of that content unless you actually go one step further with either on demand or podcasting. Other platforms, so of course websites and social medias are at the moment mostly used to promote what's coming up and discuss what's being missed, which can in itself provide a whole heap of challenges there. And of course, radio highlights are extracted as short audio pieces, and sometimes in most cases can have minimal follow through. And so kind of is created with the expectation that audiences will find related content as opposed to be provided with it at that point. And, you know, it's not to say that, you know, radio on demand may not be, you know, I guess the complete solve-all, because even at the moment with some stations that do have radio on demand, there is actually minimal follow-up to really kind of promote the fact that, hey, you know, if you missed my show, you can listen back to it in full, and attract, or even promote it through social media to attract relevant listeners to each episode, or to really capitalize on the highlights of that particular episode or segment that you've done. And so this is how you can kind of harness social media and use it as a tool to reposition radio content and thus create new audience habits, you know, thinking about it in the sense of when do I listen to radio, what does radio give me, and when and how do I seek it out. Of course, you know, stations need to be seen on social media. That's definitely a given, and most generally are, for sure. Just in my day-to-day work, and I know Brooke will agree with me, you know, a lot of stations do have a social media presence, which is awesome to see. But, you know, through that as well, audio highlights are generally the key to attracting more of a social media audience, and you need to follow through with that, and we'll tell you a little bit more about how you can do that a little later on. Your content needs to be shareable and interactive to make the most of social media. The reason why social media is so popular and pretty, you know, pumping is because a lot of what goes on and gets put out onto social media is interactive. It's a video, or it's a piece of audio, or, you know, something with a catchy headline, something that really catches people's eye at whatever time they're kind of scrolling through their feeds. And this is how radio needs to adapt to really kind of make the most of their content and use social media to do that as well. Content needs to encourage new listening patterns and more exploration, really kind of lighting a fire under your social media audience to kind of think, oh, I actually might want to go and explore other shows or other segments on the station after, you know, being caught with one particular piece that is relevant to them. So ultimately, this strategy really needs to move audiences from a passive listener to an active, on-demand listener, which in theory, as you could see from earlier on with the rise of streaming services, rather, you know, it shouldn't be a difficult thing to do. People want things on demand; they want it now, and we need to rise to that. So I've been talking for a little bit now, but I wanted to put this question to you guys, and it might be a good idea to type it into the chat box just down there. When you think about social media, and I'm assuming that most of you guys are social media users, what does it take for you to click on a post or a video link or audio on your social media? Is there anything in particular that you can think of right now that really, you know, might catch your eye, might make you want to come in and explore it a little bit further? Oh, yep. Denise said interesting visual. That's a great one. Yep. Picture. That's a good one. Yeah, if I think it can be shared, that's great. That is totally a legitimate one too. Catchy wording, that's great. Yep, headlines for sure. Yeah, a good tease. Personal relevance, that's a really good point too. Must be short. A quote, yeah, that's true, because a quote is like a glimpse into what you can expect, and thus you want to kind of go and find out a bit more. That's great. That's all. They're all really good suggestions. Other ones that we've kind of spoken about in the past with people that have been privy to this kind of what we're about to talk about, I've also said things like a reference from somebody that you might follow. So it might be like a famous person or a friend even that you kind of trust and kind of admire. They might actually provide you with those particular that kind of, I guess, backup, if you will, that makes you think, oh, well, they kind of looked at this. I might want to get into it too. So yeah, those are all really good suggestions, and keep those in mind because they're all kind of things that you can use to really kind of push out your content from radio. Okay. So now we're going to go through, sorry, let me just reposition my mic. Now we're going to go through some of the practical services that AMRAP particularly can provide for you and your station to really help you do this well and really get the most out of your content. And as I mentioned before, with social media particularly, it can be a very fleeting thing. And I'm not sure if any of you guys might remember, but, I don't know, it would have been about like 8 years ago now. MySpace, probably a bit more than 8 years ago now I think about it, but MySpace was pretty poppin' at some point, right? A lot of people were on MySpace and using it. I know when I was in school particularly, it was quite the place to be. But where is MySpace now? It isn't really anywhere. And so it's kind of a bit of a testament to the fact that, social media can really come and go. But overall, your website will always be a reliable place for people to come back to. And so here at AMRAP particularly, our focus is that your website should and always remain your online home. It's a place where you can create and curate the content, and then you can disseminate it out to social media platforms. So again, using social media as more of a tool of delivery as opposed to an actual home and a place to visit as such. AMRAP offers a service called Radio Website Services Premium. And some of you might be familiar with this already, so just bear with me, because for those that don't, it might be good for them to just kind of get an idea. Essentially, what we do is we build websites for community radio stations using a user-friendly web building platform, which is called Weebly, which is quite, as I mentioned, very user-friendly. So it's really kind of something you can use even if you have minimal IT skills. You don't need to have coding experience per se, and it's incredibly easy to use when you kind of look at more commonly used platforms like WordPress or Drupal or Joomla, things like that. It's basically got a very easy drag and drop design, which incorporates all of the widgets that AMRAP has custom built over the years. And can really kind of enhance your online presence. Once we set up a site for your station, we provide support for your station staff to help them get an understanding of how they can edit and add content to the website. And we also provide support for your program makers as well, because part of what you get when you do take out Radio Website Services Premium is AMRAP pages, which can be displayed through your website. So yeah, it's basically an all-inclusive package that allows you to have a stable and quite a good looking online presence. This is an example of one of the 27 radio RWS Premium sites that we've built since we launched. The first station to come on board was 3MDR in Victoria, and they have been going strong with their website, constantly updating it and using their pages quite well. We kind of have different elements that make up the homepage particularly. Of course, you can see a menu bar at the top. the Now Next Later banner, which gives people a great visual as soon as they land on the page of what is on at the moment, as well as an option to listen, of course, and and then what's coming up later on afterwards as well. You can also check out the latest news, and they're just news posts. And we also we gave them also a little kind of widget there where they can display their podcasts and content that they've cut out as well. It also comes with a program guide, which is super easy to edit using our AMRAP Pages control panel, and can be customized to suit the design of your site. So it looks like this on the 3MDR site, obviously, because it kind of fits in with their color coding and color scheme. But we've created sites for Noosa FM in Queensland, Koori Radio here in Sydney, and many, many more that all look completely different from each other. But so it's a very customizable service that we offer as well. And these are all, of course, hyperlinks that will take you to each show's individual AMRAP page, which is this one here. So a lot of you might be familiar with AMRAP Pages, and I'm not going to go into the full details of it. We have got more information that we can provide for you if you do want that by either contacting us. I've got the email address will be up at the end of the webinar, but we do have information on airit.org.au as well if you do want to check it out a bit more. But essentially, AMRAP Pages, it allows you to log your airplay lists. It also allows you to curate content to match what you put on air. And it not only works for the music that you put on air, but also any interviews or any segments that you might have and you might do on your show on a regular basis. You're actually able to highlight those in your playlists and provide, a bit more sorry, I'm losing my words now. You provide a bit more kind of visibility of those segments if you do want to do that. So yeah, as I mentioned, a bit limited for time, but if you do want to find out a bit more, Brooks just popped a link in the chat box for you. We also have another service that we've been working on for a while, which is AMRAP's Radio on Demand, which, as is pretty evident, it allows you to listen back to a show at any moment, anytime, anywhere you want to. 3MDR does have Radio on Demand as well, and it really means that, it's a bit of a game changer for the content that you put out to air. As we mentioned earlier on, content that goes out directly just goes out to air and doesn't have an online kind of life really just kind of disappears after a while. But on demand really rectifies that. It means that the content that you put together, you spend all that time creating, you put it to air. It's no longer just broadcast at one point in time, but it's rather made available to be heard and revisited again and again. So really a game changer for radio in general. Yeah, so as I mentioned just then, instant access to radio programs across any device as well. So mobiles particularly, when people are on the go, they no longer may just are able to just go to the streaming sites as such, but they can actually stream your program on their phone whenever they want to, and thus get all of the hard work that you've been putting into your show in their earphones, which is great. This was a bit of a quote that our boss, Chris, actually came up with, and he really likes to use it, but it's really great, actually. It unlatches radio programs from the shackles of live broadcast. Sounds a bit dramatic, but it actually is quite apt in this setting. Really gives your programs a longer lease on life. Of course, but it doesn't mean that it makes the on-air aspect of your program redundant. By all means, this is the initial platform for creation still, and will always be that. But for many listeners, on-demand might become their primary platform. It might be that, as I mentioned, they might be on the go, and they might want to listen back to your show a couple of days later or even a week later, because they weren't able to tune in at that particular moment when your show goes to air. So really it provides a bit of a long tail and really gives your program the ability to have wider access and additional replays as well. So really then would change the entire, I guess, mentality to your shows. And really, when we talk about content strategy, on demand is super important. Of course, it really enables you to attract and engage audiences, to put it through, social media, and really kind of bring more people into your station's website, and really, get them to explore the vast kind of program guides that you may have and all the different program content that you may be putting to air. And On Demand can also be used for your program's development as well, because it's a great tool to be able to keep listening back and obviously keep improving on your broadcasting skills. You can also attract like-minded content creators and volunteers to your station, which is super important. Obviously, getting new people in at your station and helping out and creating content is awesome, really, because it brings so many different opinions and so many different skill levels as well. On Demand can be a really great tool for that, because you can reach so many more people, particularly online as well. It can also extend and improve your station's sustainability and relevance, particularly depending on the content that you put to air, and it may be relevant to particular groups, whether it be organizations or activist groups, and even just like right down to musicians. If you're airing their music, you can engage them online, and they will know. Even if they're in Perth and you're in New South Wales, they'll be able to see that you have been playing their music, and they'll be super grateful for it as well. And of course, it increases the outcomes for social, cultural, community, of course, within your station's, I guess, world and area, and really secure your future and really kind of give you solid evidence that you can present when it comes to, I guess, funding and grants and the like as well. Just a little bit about this on-demand service, and we can provide more information about some more information about these, the costs as well, a little bit later on. More than happy to send that information through. But essentially, it's been developed with the support of the Community Broadcasting Foundation. It is an annual subscription service. We can plug the on-demand service into your RWS Premium website. And of course, it is compatible with AMRAP pages. And something else which we're really excited to share with you tonight, because it's something that particularly AMRAP's chief software developer, Ben, has been working on super hard, and something that's going to really be another level and another change to how your content can be shared. And that is AMRAP's Radio Replay. Now, essentially what this is, it gives you the easy ability to share out particular segments or songs to your social media audience or online audience, but also engage with, as I mentioned a bit earlier, particular bodies or organizations or bands or whoever might be related to the content that you're putting together, and really kind of take your segments and push them even further outside of the on-air and on-demand kind of sphere. So as you can see from this little graphic here, Edge Radio in Hobart have been kind of helping us out with letting us kind of test this out on their website, and needless to say, they've kind of taken it up with a lot of passion, and it's been working really well for them. This is a program called The Ride, which is done by a guy called Pete, who is really great. He plays a lot of new Australian music, and he does a lot of interviews like this one here with Jade Imagine. And what he's done is essentially put each different part of the interview into his playlist. He's time-stamped it, and in the public view, as you can see here, that means that it comes up with a listen icon. And as soon as you click on that listen icon, your on-demand window pops open, and it will start playing from that exact moment in time. So if you just want to listen to the interview that he did with Jade Imagine, the first part where she's discussing the writing and recording process for her new EP, you can click that listen button. It'll open up the audio player and jump to 8 minutes in when he begins to chat to Jade. So as you can see, it's basically it's kind of taking out the need for podcasting in a way, and really allowing you to highlight, particular parts of your program that you feel, might have been done really well that week, that went really well, and could really kind of generate some interest on social media and, of course, the wider internet in general. But of course, it doesn't just work for music. So obviously we call it a playlist, and when you think playlist, you think, okay, music, songs, yep. But really, it actually can work for a lot of different content. This was another one, and it's kind of on the other end of the scale, but essentially during Dark Mofo, which is a festival down in Tasmania, this program called The Flip Side, they did an interview with a representative from Animal Liberation Tasmania, because the festival was basically planning to do a bit of a ritual where they were going to sacrifice a bull, and it was all kind of I guess, kind of created by this artist called Herman Nitsch. And so they created a segment out of it. And they basically put some of the things that might actually attract people on social media, which of course is a catchy headline. They also put an image there, and I think if I saw that image on social media, I'd probably stop too. It's a pretty powerful image there, and put a timestamp in it. And if I click play on that, it will open up and play from the exact moment that that particular interview took place, and I'll be able to hear it. Another thing, I know someone said a quote would be something that would probably draw you in if you were scrolling through social media. Benjamin said that. And again, this is something that, you know, it kind of plays to that as well. These guys took a quote out of the interview that they did with Christy from Animal Liberation Tasmania, and they put it there. So again, another element that could really attract and catch someone's eye. I've got a whole bunch of other examples too, because they really have been doing it quite well since then. I'll just quickly open up a couple. Particularly recently, I guess the timing of this is pretty apt as well. They have a show called Bent Air, which is an LGBTIQ show, sorry. And essentially what they do is they have been creating segments where they've been discussing some of the things that are, I guess, related to the current marriage equality postal survey. And they've been creating segments out of it. And not only that, but they've done that. So if you click listen, my audio is probably not going to work. I'm really sorry about that. I tried to figure out how to do it. But basically, it starts playing from 11 minutes in, and this is, it's a chat about the levels of distress that people in the LGBTIQ community are experiencing at the moment. And then a little bit further down as well, as far as to say things that people can do if they're affected by this current, I guess, climate of debate, and also put in links there so that people can follow on for more information. So there's a lot of ways that you can really harness this particular technology and really kind of, push it out to communities online that might be interested in this. All right. So this is kind of just a bit of an example of how you can share it out. So back again with the Animal Liberation Tasmania interview. This is where the text comes into play. As we mentioned, photographs and text isn't necessarily the the main focus, but it definitely helps. And with this particular Facebook post that has been created, you've got a catchy headline, a bit of a directive at the start, listen, and then a bit of a description of what it's about, and of course a striking image as well to catch people's attention. That's where you can kind of use things to really kind of play to your content strengths rather. All right, so as I mentioned, kind of breaking it down a bit further, so you set the air times to include informative talk breaks. So this can kind of work when you've got songs, particularly. You include the information about the artists. It might be news or song analysis as well in your forward announce just before you play the song. We have a tendency, I guess, to back announce songs in radio. I know for myself, from personal experience on my own show, I back announce quite a lot of songs, but forward announcing can really work when it comes to sharing out this content with our radio replay technology. So on your playlist on your AMRAP page, you set the song's airtime to be on that forward announce, not on the start of the song, but on the forward announce. And you can discuss, discuss whatever it is you want to discuss, whether it be this is the new song by Orion, for instance, discover where to see them live, give more information, and then you can share it out. And when you share it out, you tag the artist in it with their social media handles. You kind of alert them to the fact that, hey, I've just played your song, this is what I said about it. That might then encourage them to share it out to their fans, and then the chain can kind of keep going on, and your content could really go so far, like quite a lot further than what you probably would have thought about when you first put it to air. As mentioned, audiences will replay your forward announce, hear the song, and then can really kind of start seeing you as a trusted source of music, opinion, and also news. So it refers to, I guess, songs, it refers to interviews, it refers to any kind of segment that you might do on your show. So it's a good point, and I think we're kind of a bit pressed on time, so I won't stop to kind of ask these questions and get you guys to respond. But good stuff to think about at this point is, in your own setting, in your own radio shows and in your stations, what existing content would work well as radio on demand segment? And what new segments could you have in programs that would work well? And yeah, feel free to put some suggestions in the chat box. We might come back to them later if we have a bit more time. But it's a good thing to kind of take away from this as well, to kind of give it a bit of thought and see how you could apply it to your own stations. So yeah, as mentioned, you know, this new technology, this radio replay, will really enable you to reposition your station and radio in general in social media. It'll really give people, your online audience particularly, instant access to segments and songs within a program. So rather than, you know, having to kind of wait for the whole program to get to a certain point in it, they can just go straight to the things that interest them the most. It might be an interview that you've done or a song that you've premiered or something like that. It would be, it's basically there on demand, and thus kind of really harnessing what streaming services do well. It keeps audiences engaged beyond that moment. Unlike some, you know, extracted audio like podcasts or short videos, you know, it'll enable, after you listen to a particular segment using AMRAP's radio replay, it'll continue to play the rest of the show. So if they actually like what they've heard, they might continue to listen to your show and then discover more music or discover more things that you've done on your show, whether it be, again, segments, interviews, and the like. It allows you to do more direct marketing of content by your station and also through your program makers as well. It allows them to really focus specific content to, as I mentioned, I guess, organizations, artists, the wider online community as well. And really allows you to take advantage of the social media engagement tools, which is, of course, tagging people in your posts, so people that are relevant. And it may not just be the artist that you or the person that you've interviewed, but it could also be, you know, other organizations, you know, that might be related to it, local councils. My mind goes blank, but there's just so many options. And also, of course, comments and shares as well. That allows people to really push your message through for you as well, if they are so, you know, kind of encouraged to do so. And really allows you to be a trusted source of content on audiences' social news feeds and third-party media makers. It allows you to kind of be positioned as someone that has an opinion that many people might actually agree with or might actually respect as well. Again, something that streaming and the playlisting things that they do on the streaming platforms has kind of harnessed at this point. You know, there's kind of trend makers and people that the general population kind of looks to when they want suggestions for songs, or, you know they do good interviews or something like that. This really allows us to get on that playing field as community radio makers. So we kind of like to say that this, you know, using this is really going to be a bit of a revolution for radio in a traditional, and the traditional radio that we kind of have known for, you know, the last few decades, I guess you could say. It changes so much, really. It changes the reach of the content, as is obvious, you know, from on air to web simulcast to basically being able to be listened to more than once. But also the content outcomes, most importantly, you know, it gives it more time to get to more ears and gain traction, as opposed to just being that instant. Sorry, I was laughing at Neil's joke there. I do like that reference. That was a great one. It does give more time for the content to get to more ears, as I mentioned, gain more traction, and really kind of provide a bit of a lead up to the next installment of your program, the next episode, as well as gain reviews and also help you with development. But it also might give you a new motivation, you know, give you a new kind of I guess a new kind of goal and a reason why you make your radio program, and also change what you get from it as well. And it really can, I guess, alter the way you might produce and develop your program with AMRAP's radio replay in mind, because as I mentioned a bit earlier, the forward announce isn't necessarily something that we might think of, because we back announce quite a lot, but we might actually change that now, because then it will suit both on air and social media sharing as well. So it really helps to kind of change our perceptions and also change our positioning online. Another good thing, which is more of a station administrative side of things, but will really help to make the process of sharing out this content a lot easier, is something that we call featured content, which if you're a regular AMRAP Pages user, you'll probably see it. When you put a song or a segment into your playlist, there's a little checkbox that comes up and it's called feature content. What this actually does is, if you tick that, it will, in the control panel of AMRAP Pages, it'll actually collate what you've ticked into a report, as you can see just at the bottom of the screen here. Your digital content producers at the station, the people that look after your website or the people that look after your social media, can actually run this report quite regularly, and they'll be able to see all of the things that you've done on your show if you've ticked that featured content tick box. And this will then give them the option to say, well, is this, like, this was done really well, or this will be relevant to so many different people who follow us on social media and online. I'm going to share this out to our social media and make a post on our website to kind of promote this a bit further. So you can see here from the right earlier on in that kind of moving graphic there, Pete ticked feature content. It comes up in this report. He can, the website coordinator can click view, go straight to that particular segment. If they need to do a bit of tidying up, they can do that. Maybe put in a catchy headline if there wasn't one already, and then they can prime it up for social media and then share it out. So it's really about trying to make this process as easy as possible to do that. Allows you to kind of give it extra, and these are all the things that you can do with the featured content. You know, you can put it in e-news as well. That's a great one. E-news, a lot of stations would obviously do that on a weekly basis or maybe even a fortnightly basis, but you can really enhance it by sending out links in the e-news to update broadcasters and also your subscribers to your e-news, to send out links to that so they can check out the things that they might have missed. You can also use it in Facebook ads if that's what you do, you know, in a targeted way, to reach potential new audiences or people of interests. And even then, coming right back down to the very beginning of the preparation of your show, you can use it to attract high-profile interviews, also inform discussions and topics, and attract targeted communities of interest. But also, of course, most importantly, you can showcase the best segments on website through your station's news or your blog, even a weekly wrap on your website as well. So there's lots of things that can be done with this featured content. And now it comes down to, I guess, the full practicality is who has time for all of this? And what we've kind of said at AMRAP is, well, you know, you kind of need digital producers. One person at the very least that's assigned by a rostered day. So they might be in on the Monday or the Tuesday. They come in, they run a report, and then they can kind of tidy up this content on your website. As I mentioned, they'll fine tune it. They can then share it to social media. So by fine tune as well, it's about adding images, adding title descriptions, those catchy headlines that people kind of want to click on when they see them, images that are striking, that catch your eye as well. They can do this on a daily basis. This can be part of their duties at the station as a volunteer. Then it's kind of about the station website coordinators, the people that are responsible for updating your website. They can look at what the digital producers have promoted and they can share it again through social media channels, or even be responsible for writing a weekly news wrap of what's on air and online. And also can collect, you know, station news, public news, and presenter profiles as well, so that they can basically, you know, maximize this content that you've done to the full capacity that it has. This is just an example that something that Edge Radio in Hobart started doing once they got AMRAP's Radio Replay. They started doing a bit of a wrap of all the things that had gone to air, and put hyperlinks there, and of course you can see images and brief descriptions, and they pushed that out to social media as well to kind of get more people, more eyes on it, more ears on it, and really kind of enhance and try and get the most out of the content that had been made by their volunteers and their program makers. So that's just one example of what you can do. And looking at these structures, you know, these attract different types of volunteers, people that might be rewarded by social media response and may not be interested in being on air. They might be media and communication students. They might be marketing students. They might want to get into social media. It's about kind of looking a bit further afield and really kind of trying to get more people involved in your station. So it might be a good tool for that, something which you can apply when you're kind of bringing in new people. And overall, you know, audience outcomes particularly, these are super important, because these are the things, I guess, that can really be changed if you kind of harness this new technology. Of course, they can find you on their personal social platforms and invite you into their world, invite you into their timelines, you know, into their news feeds. They might come for a particular segment, but they might actually stay and stream the rest of the program, rather than just listening to that one-off kind of audio clip or podcast that you might have cut out, you know, in previous times. And they might see that, you know, finally your station is maybe a bit more relevant beyond the airwaves. You know, they can listen to you at all times of day, whenever it suits them. And thus they'll be able to see you as a trusted source of content and ideas. They might even then start to, you know, engage with you beyond their social news feeds, and then you can essentially, you know, de-randomize your audience engagement. So it's not just about somebody who might be listening at this specific time. You know, you can target it, so you can, you know, reach out to specific social groups and the like. That's pretty much it, which is amazing. We're kind of at the tail end now of the webinar, which is really cool. I guess now would be a great time for, you know, questions if you have any. But also, what I really wanted to kind of put out to you guys is, you know, to really think about these. And I mean, if you might want to put them in the chat box, but I'm also would encourage you to kind of take these away and really think about them in the context of your own stations and your own programs. Firstly, of course, what do you currently do to promote your radio programs online and on air? That's a huge one. And then, of course, what could you do if your station developed a content strategy using on-air techniques and AMRAP's radio replay in combination? I guess the possibilities are quite endless in that manner. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys have you got a lot out of this. And if you do want more information, that's my email address, and I'm more than happy to send you guys any information that you need. We will be sending out a bit of a wrap too, which I think Danny will be putting together, and we'll try and answer any questions that maybe have been unanswered at this point.
Awesome. That was amazing, Chelsea. Thanks so much. That email address you've got on the screen, I've just put that into the chat box where you can copy and paste it from there to save you typing 17 times or something, whatever it is. It looks like the question that you have been given, Brooke has ably answered all of those. So Adrian's question about current affairs programs for a Perth community radio station. Do we need permission of our community radio stations to start with these AMRAP pages? AMRAP pages can showcase talks content, according to Brooke. You can get back to you after the webinar. So there we go, Adrian. You can get back to them. If sponsorship announcements, this is Mike Kennedy's question, if sponsorship announcements are included on the in-demand stream, are there any restrictions? I think it's generally seen as sort of like your on-demand will be a fairly accurate representation of what was broadcast on air. So if it's identical to what was broadcast, that was fine. And if a person's listening to a radio program after the fact, if there's sort of information on there that's somewhat dated, you've really got to understand that. I suggest it's beyond the capabilities. Yeah. A lot of stations just go through that and cut out bits.
For sure, but it's also, I mean, you could even look at it in a way as to really help gain, kind of a tool, to kind of gain more sponsorship in a way, because you're really basically putting the reach for, so if you've got like a sponsorship announcement and it's within an on-demand file or a radio replay file, you can actually it'll be even further of a reach online as it will on air. So really, if you think about it, you could kind of turn it around and really put it out there for when you're kind of trying to gain sponsorship from different, exactly, Mike, like more reach, and really kind of enticing more organisations and businesses to sponsor your station, because they obviously will get more exposure from and more bang for their buck as such, I guess. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. All right. That Mike agrees with you in regards to that. So that's what he was thinking about, more reach. Greg Carrick there says they're redoing their station website, so they will explore AMRAP's offerings. To you, Greg, I say Godspeed. The radio website services premium is custom made for community broadcasters. A lot of great examples of it are available out there now, and it could be what your station is looking for. It's affordable and recordable, and damn straight isn't it audible. What else is in there? A lot of people saying it was a nice presentation, Chelsea. Not a lot of comments there on the fact that I made that fantastic joke about your surname there at the start of the presentation.
I missed those quotes. Hang on. What was people?
Oh, no one sort of commented on it at all. John Hoey asks a very, very relevant question. What, if any, copyright/royalty issues result from on-demand? Now, obviously, your station will need to have both a PPCA and an APRA license, and you will need additional licensing if you are going to have your on-demand broadcast. What we can do is we can send you a bit further information about that. And I think I've got your email. And what I'll also do in the follow-up email that we send to people, I'll put in the information about that as well. But it's just like your regular license in that the cost for that will be calculated according to station revenue. And there's a few other variables in there. There's no sort of one-size-fits-all answer for that one. But hopefully it's a situation where for stations the extra cost for having these licenses in place, the increased service that you'll be able to offer your community will justify that cost. But that's definitely a thing that's got to be sorted out at a high management board level. But I think sort of we'll all be leaning that way. But there's options there for both PPCA and APRA licenses. And obviously, as a CBAA members, you receive a discounted PPCA license, and that will also apply to sort of the online versions of that as well. But I've got a bit more information for that I can include in the follow-up emails, because that's probably a whole webinar unto itself. Now,
yeah, I was going to say, I think you'd be the best person for that, Danny. So that's cool.
Don't say that. Why do you guys get to do the cool stuff like radio replay, and I'm here wearing the copyright hat? It's not fair.
Because you're a knowledgeable being, Danny. You really are.
Got any jobs going, AMRAP? I can do that. Adrian, there's a question. I don't know if Brooke, did you answer this one? Adrian's question about what statistics do these pages give you? Those being the AMRAP pages.
Did you? Oh, you mean, okay. So with an AMRAP page, you can get statistics on your percentage of Australian music. Is that what you're referring to? Because that's kind of the main thing. So when you fill in your playlist, you can obviously download a report that will kind of collate all of the songs and segments rather that you've logged. And of course, Excel, with a bit of Excel magic as well, you would also be able to kind of sift through that information and find out the particular patterns and stuff that you need to know.
Adrian, I hope that was the question you were asking. It looks like you're still here, but I don't know, you might be off making a cup of tea or something like that. Who knows? It is 7:30. Now, we will get a transcript of all of the questions that have been asked in the chat box tonight, and on the off chance that we didn't answer them, and props to Brooke from AMRAP for doing such a bang-up job there of answering the questions via text as soon as she received questions via text.
Yeah, Brooke's been on fire tonight. So stoked that she was here.
Yeah, tapping away.
Thank you, Brooke.
Okay, well, we got one last question here. That's Jason Evans. Question in regards to social media platforms that you recommend.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, so I guess Facebook is probably the most predominant and known one. And to be fair as well, Facebook is generally, I guess, a bit more customizable, like, in the sense that you're not limited to characters. You can send links and the like and kind of edit it to a degree. I guess when you're looking at Twitter or Instagram, I mean, Instagram is much more of a visual medium anyway, and Instagram can definitely be incorporated into your station's online content strategy, most definitely. But I guess Facebook first and foremost, I would say is the main player, and then Twitter, and of course Instagram. If you have capacity to run them all, then yeah, for sure. But I'd definitely get on Facebook as soon as you can if you're not on there.
Excellent. That's exactly right. Okay, then we've had good questions about sending out the PowerPoint presentation. I'm sure that information will be able to make that available. But very exciting session tonight. Thank you so much to Chelsea. Thank you so much to Brooke. thank you also to Geordie at the CMTO, who's been with us here
Thanks,
this evening.
Geordie.
There and making yourself known in the instant message
Yeah.
box. Don't miss our next couple of webinars. If you've got women in community broadcasting at your station and young people in community broadcasting at your station, then please make sure that they are there for our next two webinars, which is going to be 11th of October is the Women in Community Broadcasting one, 18th of October for young people in community broadcasting, women in community broadcasting who might sort of be interested in getting involved in the CBAA board and the representative position there. That position becomes vacant this year. More information will be available at that webinar. But we better close this thing down. On behalf of the CBAA and the CMTO, I'd like to thank you all for your attendance here this evening. Absolutely wonderful to have you here. There will be some questions asked of you digitally when you leave this session. We love your feedback. It helps us shape future sessions and indeed the future of the sector. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye now.